Welcome to the Monday edition of the Hard Starboard Radio Network, blogtalkradio.com, kicking off another week of blogcasting awesomeness. I am your host, Jasmius, your ruler, your benevolent despot on your fount and rabbi of conservatism, constitutionalism, Christianity, and common sense, Monday through Friday. 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Guest call-in number 646-478-5068. Email address jasmius@comcast.net. The chat room is open. And do you see this cap on my head for those of you watching on the Jasmius cam, assuming that today is the most, or that today's is the most listened to podcast of this week? Well, this is, of course, my Seahawks Super Bowl 48 cap, championship cap. And we are one step closer to retaining that championship, to being the 8th team and the first team in over a decade, the longest such drought in the Super Bowl era, to repeat as world champions of professional football. And, of course, then we'll begin next season. And now, we need 2 more wins, so I'm not getting ahead of myself. See, that's the great thing about the Seahawks. They don't worry about what anybody else says. They don't worry about what anybody else does. They don't care who they play. They worry about their game. No, yes. And their game is better than anybody else's, folks. I mean, if you saw that game at the Clink Saturday night, nationally televised game, Cam Chancellor, oh my God. I love his line about, well, gee, if the other Cam, Carolina Panthers quarterback Cam Newton, if he's Batman, if he's Superman, well then I must be Batman. I'm the Dark Knight. I'm the Dark Knight. I'm Batman. And boy, I got to tell you, if anybody looked like Superman Saturday night, it was Cam Chancellor. Oh boy! Did you see? Not on one play, but on 2 consecutive plays, he leaped the entire line and got right up in the face of the Panthers kicker, whose name I don't remember, and it doesn't matter anyway, and almost blocked the kicks. That's the only thing he didn't do. He leaped the entire line of scrimmage on consecutive field goal attempts by the Panthers. The only thing he didn't do was actually block the kick. He did everything else. He made multiple tackles. He damaged multiple Panthers players' souls, in the words of All-Pro cornerback Richard Sherman. And, of course, he had the dagger, the 90-yard pick six, off of the aforementioned Panthers quarterback Cam Newton to give the Seahawks a 31-10 lead, lock up the game. And now it wasn't all wine and roses, because the Panthers did put up 132 rushing yards, or about twice what the Seahawks averaged giving up this season. And the Seahawks themselves only managed to put up 100 rushing yards, which is barely more than half of what they amassed on an average basis during the regular season. And so, somebody had to pick up the slack. Well, the defense picked up the slack with 3 turnovers. 2 of them cashed in for touchdowns, including Cam Chancellor's pick 6. And Russell Wilson had arguably the best, if not at least one of the best games of his career. 15-22, 269 yards, 3 touchdowns, 8 for 8, with 2 of those touchdown passes on 3rd down. Let's just, Coach Pete Carroll put it, it's just unheard of. It was a thing of beauty to watch his touchdown passes to first Doug Baldwin, and then Jermaine Kearse. I mean, and did you see Kearse's one-handed catch? I mean, so yeah, but they're pedestrian. They're Seahawks receivers. They're Baldwin and Kearse. They're pedestrian. They're appetizers. You know. So you know, I mean, the Panthers had a plan, and the Panthers are similar in some ways. They're similar in the way they play the game to the Seahawks. You know, try to be a power running team, try to be a physical defense. Problem was, their secondary is not good. It wasn't good last year either, and it wasn't good this year. And that's what Russell Wilson was able to exploit. And so, you know, I mean, Panthers always seem to play us tough, but it was just a matter of time, and we saw the result. I mean, if there's anything that the Seahawks are the best at, and there are many things that the Seahawks are the best at, but if there's anything that is their trademark, it is they finish. They finish. I mean, it was a typical Seahawk victory. You know, all about the ball, forcing turnovers, physical play. And, you know, even in the second half, though, it should be pointed out that 3/4 of the Panthers' rushing yardage was picked up in the first half. So we made our adjustments at halftime. We clamped down on D'Angelo Williams and, I can't remember the other, Jonathan Martin, yeah. Clamped down on them, and then 2/3 of the Seahawks' rushing yardage was obtained after halftime. So, and Max Unger, who looked came limping off the field, looked like an opposing lineman had rolled up at the ankle that he had injured earlier in the season. Well, he's fine. He's fine. Cornerback. Byron Maxwell, who had a severe chest cold last week, had shortness of breath, didn't play much at all Saturday. He's going to be fine, so you don't have to worry about, you know, for Seahawks fans out there, you don't have to worry about Thurl Simon getting lit up by Aaron Rodgers in the NFC Championship game this Sunday. So the only sad note is oh no. I can't remember his name. Oh, let's see. Let me see if I can find it on here. I was just looking at it, too. One of the Seahawks rookie receivers, not Kevin Norwood, but I want to say Paul Richardson. I don't think that's right. Paul Richardson, yeah, that's right. That's right. He was injured in the fourth quarter Saturday. It turns out he has torn his ACL, so he's out for the year. He's done. Just like Brandon Meebane is done, just defensive lineman, nose tackle. And just like defensive tackle Jordan Hill is done with the calf injury. So, you know, the Seahawks aren't unscathed with injuries. The pass rush isn't what it was when Jordan Hill was in there the last 6 games of the season, or regular season, but we shall persevere. The Seahawks, well, Pete Carroll, Dan Quinn, Darrell Bevel, they always figure things out. You know, I think if there's anything that's underestimated about the Seahawks, it's the quality of the coaching. I mean, you think about what Pete Carroll had to do following the Percy Harvin blow up, and then trading him away, and all that, and getting the team to get back to the play for your brother, you know, the cohesiveness, the esprit de corps that they had in the Super Bowl run last year, and now here they are again. And I just asked the question: who's going to beat them? Who? You tell me. I mean, I look at the green. In fact, I look at all 3 teams that are left, and here's what I see: number 11, number 13, number 15. Those are the defensive rankings of the Colts, the Patriots, and the Packers, respectively. As far as the NFC Championship game opponent at CenturyLink Field this Sunday, the Green Bay Packers are the NFC version of last year's Denver Broncos. You have a team with an average team with an average defense and a gimpy Hall of Fame quarterback. I mean, we saw it again in the regular season finale between the Packers and the Detroit Lions. You know, when Aaron Rodgers injured his calf, his left calf, I think it is, and when he was out of the game the remainder of the first half against the Lions, the Packers just collapsed. They were up 14-0, and bam, it was 14-all. It's like we saw it last season when Aaron Rodgers broke his collarbone, was out for 6 or 7 weeks. The Packers just, it's like an air coming out of a balloon. They weren't the same team without one player. Now, true, Hall of Fame quarterback, but still, Eddie Lacy's not going to run on Seahawks. When he played in Week 1 at CenturyLink, this is a rematch of Week 1, the kickoff game, ironically enough. First NFC game of the year, September 4th, a Thursday, first game of the season. Regular season, and now the last game of the NFC side of the season, a rematch of the first one. In that game, Packers running back Eddie Lacy had 34 yards on 12 carries. I don't see any reason why it's going to be much, if any, different this Sunday than it was 4 months ago. I mean, Eddie Lacy, in fact, was quoted after yesterday's Packers officiating helped and aided and abetted a win over the Dallas Cowboys. Not that I'm complaining about that. I much prefer to play the Packers than the Cowboys. Week 6 ought to have illustrated that. Go back and look it up, see what I'm talking about. But he said, he was quoted as saying that, well, we're a much different team now than we were then. We're much more confident. Okay, whatever. They're brave words to me, because teams don't change, not that much. You know, it's like after the NFC title game last year, that very evening, Broncos wide receiver Wes Welker tweeted that, we're going to play NFC football. Yeah, sure you are. You know, a team doesn't change its spots. It doesn't change its style of play in the space of 2 weeks. So I'm color me skeptical that the Packers are a totally different team now, and we'll see how different they are this Sunday. But I don't think it's going to be all that different. It might be closer. I'm not saying it's going to be 3 or 4 touchdowns again, but it's. I don't think it's going to be dramatically different. In fact, I was reflecting on this morning that the Seahawks' path to Super Bowl 49 is a lot easier than it was the one to Super Bowl 48. To be honest with you. So, at any rate, this is what's being defended. I'm pointing to my Seahawks Super Bowl 48 championship cap, and I see no reason why it won't be. I look at the 3 teams left besides the Seahawks. I'm not really particularly concerned with any one of them. I mean, I suppose if you had to put a gun to my head, I might be concerned a little bit about the Colts, only because the Hawks went into the drum last year and lost a shootout to Andrew Luck and the Colts. So I suppose if you want me to express concern about any of the 3 remaining teams in the NFL playoffs, there you go. But I'm not particularly concerned. I mean, you know, Tom Brady's not particularly mobile. Aaron Rodgers is a potted plant with that calf injury. And Andrew Luck, well, you know, Andrew Luck's a big kid. You know, he's not Russell Wilson mobile, but mobile nonetheless. It'll be interesting to see whether the Colts turn out to be. See, I've had this feeling about the playoffs that last year there really weren't any teams of destiny. It went according to form, according to seeding. And then I had some suspicions about it's going to be the Baltimore Ravens again. Joe Flacco, the Joe Montana of his of the 21st century, and then of course they went down to the Patriots Saturday. And then I was thinking, well, what about Dallas? Dallas Cowboys. Tony Romo finally has a running game. And DeMarco Murray, well, not so much. They got rooked. Not so much by the refs as by the rule that they invoked on Des Bryant's catch down at the 1 yard line. I mean, it's the Calvin Johnson rule. You got to control the ball all the way to the turf, and if it hits the turf and pops loose, then in other words, the ground can't cause a fumble, but it can cause an incompletion somehow. Which I agree is a stupid rule. The Cowboys got rooked, not by the refs, because they were calling the rule that is in the book as it's written, but by the rule itself. But like I say, I'm not going to complain because I didn't want to face the Packers. I don't think it would have mattered to the champs. But the Packers are definitely a better matchup for Seattle than Dallas was. We more than happy not to face that offensive line again. At any rate, so I just look at that, and the Cowboys did not turn out to be that team of destiny either. So now we're looking at the Colts, who beat, of course, Peyton Manning, the Denver Broncos yesterday at Mile High, and so looks like the Colts just might be that team of destiny. Although I have noticed that in Andrew Luck's 3 seasons, he's gone in stages. First year, made the playoffs, lost in the first round. Last year, made the playoffs, won in the first round, lost in the divisional round. And now this year, Andrew Luck's Colts have won in the wild card game and won in the divisional round, so if he holds to form, he'll lose at the Big Razor next Sunday to Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, who will then slouch toward Glendale, Arizona to be massacred by the Super Bowl champions. And then the quest for the first ever Super Bowl three-peat can begin. After all that table setting, I've used up all my table setting time, but I will mention that at blogtalkradio.com/HSR network, there are over 7.5 years, 3/4 of a decade worth of podcasts for your downloading pleasure, your education, edification, enlightenment, and entertainment in all your life's endeavors. And there's also a follow button for you to click for many reasons, including perhaps putting Hard Starboard Radio on the main page at blogtalkradio.com as a featured podcast right alongside American Daily Review, ladies and gentlemen. It is the kickoff of the 3-hour Saturday afternoon extravaganza, a 3-hour program on 2 venues. It starts at high noon Pacific time, 3 o'clock on the East Coast, at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, where, by the way, there are over 5.5 years worth of podcasts for your downloading ecstasy. If you ever find yourself being shipped off to a desert island, save all of them on an MP3 player with plenty of batteries, and your entertainment and educational needs will be taken care of in full. But in the first hour, I'm joined by my friend, my comrade in arms, fellow activist, fellow right-wing extremist, and I draw the line at classical centrist. That phrase still doesn't make sense to me. I understand how it's a conversation starter. What do you mean by classical centrist? Well, let me tell you. As a constitutionalist, I find it a bit off-putting, but then nobody, Doug Gibbs doesn't need to start conversations about the United States Constitution with me other than to just engage in a mutual admiration society of our vast constitutional knowledge, which is reinforced on a daily basis by being Doug's book editor and being his co-host and backup host on the third hour of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza. So, at any rate, Mr. Gibbs joins me. Oh, and brother from another mother. That's the other accurate designation. But Mr. Gibbs joins me in the first hour. We go over, discuss, break down, analyze the big stories of the week, which usually, lately, it's been hanging over. It's been taking up pretty much all 2 hours. Now, interestingly enough, last Saturday, Doug was only on for an hour because we had an in-studio guest in the third hour of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza. More on that in a moment. And so he had to drop off at the top of the second hour, so I finished the big stories of the week solo. But usually, if I had known that, I would have made sure to have time for Jennifer Crawford, my online friend of over 20 years, that Hoosier gal from the great state of Indiana, on the program, but I didn't know that in advance, so what are you going to do? But however it shakes out, whether Doug and I take up the whole 2 hours of American Daily Review or whether there's time for Jennifer, I like having Jennifer on because it distinguishes hour number 2 from hour number 1, and also hour number 2 from hour number 3, because at the top of that third hour, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, we ratchet back up the intensity and we switch venues from blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review to KCAA.radio.com globally, KCAA AM 1050 FM 106.3 locally in the Southern California Inland Empire area for the flagship program of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza, Constitution Radio with this man. If today's is the most listened to podcast of the week, then you're watching me on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/user/hardstarboardradio. Thank you for watching, listening, and subscribing, by the way. And don't forget our other YouTube channel to watch, listen, and subscribe to it as well. That, of course, being youtube.com/user/American Daily Review 2, the number 2. To which each Saturday's 3 hours, each weekend's 3-hour Saturday afternoon extravaganza is uploaded. All 3 hours smushed together because it is one program, 3 hours, 1 day a week on 2 venues, and we're going to make it a 3-hour program weekdays on 1 venue through the powerhouse blowtorch flagship station, maybe KCAA. We'll see how that shakes out. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. We've only just begun, folks. Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, featuring the regulars, Mr. Gibbs, myself, Alex Ferguson of ConservativeCanada.com, and Engineer Joe, a good Joe indeed. There's also a top-tier guest, whether national, regional, or local. Last Saturday's guest, which you can go back to the podcast, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs. The easiest way to navigate there is to go to douglasvgibbs.com, click on the radio link, and that'll take you to the link to the Constitution Radio podcast page at kcaaradio.com. The guest was Doc Nye, who is interesting. He's got a replica of the DeLorean. They had several for the movie, so there wasn't just one. But he's got a replica of the DeLorean used in the Back to the Future movies. And he has a racing team that, interestingly enough, uses its proceeds in order to search for missing children. It's kind of an interesting combination. And of course, he's a vast repository of Back to the Future lore and trivia. Didn't stump me, though. It'd be interesting if there was such a place as Hill Valley, California, it'd be interesting to go there this coming October 21st and see what pops into the sky. Of course, there isn't a skyway, so if a flying car pops into the sky, they're not going to have any traffic to worry about. But at any rate, there's also the book of the week, the Constitution Quest question of the week, taken from a piece from the game, available at many retail outlets, including ConstitutionQuest.com, the original. And if you make your purchase of Constitution Quest, the board game there, and put the discount code DOG into the discount field, you get 10% off your purchase. So it's difficult to beat that deal. And of course, a run-through featuring stories 2 and 1 of the All-Star Collision Big Stories of the Week. All-Star Collision, the Kings of Rock and Roll, in Corona, California. The web address, allstarol.com. The local number, 951-279-9161. And now, while working several jobs over the past decade, Doug Gibbs pursued a calling, learning the Constitution of the United States. He objectively researched, dissected, and obtained illumination from each and every word in that historic document. His calling led Doug into internet radio, the political pistachio, radio revolution, the forerunner of Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs on KCAA, where he spoke on political news topics of the day, all the while using those events to illustrate the wisdom inherent in our founders and the Constitution itself. A humble man, Doug was soon asked to teach classes about the Constitution and later to guest on other shows, and then on cable network news programs like Sean Hannity, like Al Jazeera twice, like National Public Radio. It's eminently believable that he was once turned down as a guest on a legal show because having someone without a law degree discussing the Constitution was hugely embarrassing to the legal profession, since he knows it better than they do. They know case law. They don't know the Constitution. Mr. Gibbs does. Don't believe me? Read his 2 books and counting. 25 Myths of the United States Constitution and the Basic Constitution, both by Douglas V. Gibbs, available at createspace.com and amazon.com. You want the links, go to politicalpistachio.com. They're right at the top of the main page. Mr. Gibbs is gregarious, earnest, and masterful in his ability to use current world events to help us all better understand the United States Constitution, the defined structure of the branches of government, and how this puppy's supposed to work according to the vision of the Founding Fathers. Liberty Tree Media Group is proud to market Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs. Check out www.douglasvgibbs.com and his incredibly popular blog, due in no small part to me. I core dumped a bunch more posts on it this morning, most of which are constitute the stack today. Politicalpistachio.com. Well, you may have heard about the anti-terror march in Paris yesterday. 50 world leaders marching arm in arm in solidarity, and it wasn't just them. This was at the head of as many as 1.6 million people. In fact, they're estimating it's the biggest single gathering in one place of people in Paris since the Allied liberation of Paris from the Nazis in 1944. So this is, that's fairly significant. That's newsworthy. Even if the actual level of commitment from these world leaders and from the other 1.6 million Frenchies is, I'm convinced, still dubious. But here was the question. You remember that show, that cartoon, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? Well, in this case, it was Where in the World is Barack Hussein Obama? Well, not Paris. Here's the first quote from Newsmax. As many as 1.6 million people marched through Paris on Sunday in a massive show of unity and defiance in the face of terrorism that killed 17 people in France's bleakest moment in half a century. Hey, you know what? If that was France's bleakest moment in half a century, how good have they had it? Doesn't take much to shake them, does it? The march ended without major incident by 9 p.m. Sunday, local time. Paris police said that ought to give you an indication of how enormously stringent and tight the security was around it, in and around it. Their arms linked, more than 40 world leaders headed the somber procession, setting aside their differences, or at least pretending to, for a manifestation that French Communist President Francios Hollande said turned the city into the capital of the world. It figures that a Frenchman would say something arrogant like that, but I guess he had ample cover for it. Amid intense security, and with throngs rivaling those that followed the liberation of Paris from the Nazis 70 years ago, the city became the capital of the world for a day. The next thing you know, they're going to be building the Palais de la Concorde. You got to be a hardcore trekker to recognize that reference. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, more on him later, stood near Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also marched. Notable for his absence was, of course, Barack Hussein Obama. Even U.S. Attorney General Eric the Red Holder, who was supposed to have resigned several months ago, but still hanging on for some reason. And actually, he was in Paris for a pre-March terrorism summit convened by Hollande, but couldn't be bothered to actually participate in the march. He skipped the historic event. Now, in a sense, I can see why it'd be newsworthy. I don't know how historic it really is in terms of substance. Symbolism, sure. But substance? Oh, but don't worry, folks. Don't worry. The one went to the French embassy in Washington and scribbled a missive on a postcard with the pencil he uses to cheat on his golf score. He called President Hollande and left a nice voicemail. And he sent our ambassador to France, which participated in the march. And they all looked at her and said, "Who the hell are you?" They knew that she wasn't French because she didn't stink. Meanwhile, here's a list, folks. Here's a list of the other countries that sent somewhat higher-ranking poobahs. You ready for this? You got to take a big breath to get through this all. I don't think I can get through all this in one breath. French President Francios Hollande, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, British Prime Minister David Cameron, Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi, Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy, Romanian President Klaus Iohannis, probably not pronouncing that correctly, European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, European Parliament President Martin Schulz, European Union President Donald Tusk, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, Polish Prime Minister Ewa Kopax, Danish Prime Minister Helle Thorning-Schmidt, Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, Greek Prime Minister Antonis Samaras, Irish Prime Minister Enda Kenny, Portuguese Prime Minister Pedro Passos Coelho, Czech Prime Minister Bohuslav Sobotka, Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico, Latvian Prime Minister Lamdota Strajuma, Bulgarian Prime Minister Boyko Borisov, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, Croatian Prime Minister Zoran Milanovic, Luxembourg Prime Minister Xavier Bettel, Maltese Prime Minister Joseph Muscat, Slovenian Prime Minister Miro Cerar, Swedish Prime Minister Stefan Löfven, Finnish Prime Minister Alexander Stubb, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, as aforementioned, Swiss President Simonetta Sommaruga, Kosovo President Atifiti Jajaga, Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama, Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu, Norwegian Prime Minister Erna Solberg, Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, as aforementioned, Austrian Foreign Minister Sebastian Kurz, Canadian Public Safety Minister Stephen Blaney, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman, Jordanian King Abdullah II and Queen Rania, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, United Arab Emirates Foreign Minister Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, so the United Arab Emirates Foreign Minister, the Qatari Sheikh Mohammed bin Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, so United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahraini Foreign Minister Sheikh Khalid bin Ahmed Al Khalifa and Prince Abdullah bin Hamad Al Khalifa. So let's see, you got 3 Persian Gulf sheikdoms represented here, and some I guess you can say this was the African contingent. Malian President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, Gabonese President Ali Bongo, I'm not making that one up, folks, that's what it says, Bongo, Nigerian President Mahamadou Issoufou, Beninian President Thomas Boni Yahi, Tunisian Prime Minister Mehdi Joma, and Algerian Foreign Minister Ramtani Lamamra. That's quite a list. And Barack Hussein Obama couldn't be bothered to join them. Now, sure, the Muslim contingent was there for PR cover, but rather than any genuine opposition to the Charlie Hebdo massacre, but it at least indicates enough awareness of the mass public revulsion to the attacks that they needed to be present, or they perceived that they needed to be present for so visible a display of global solidarity. mean, even the leaders of other warring nations, Israel, PLO, Russia, Ukraine, created the appearance of setting aside their differences, at least temporarily. But Barack Obama, he couldn't be bothered, folks. Wasn't important. He's played all of France's golf courses. Couldn't even spare incontinent Uncle Joe Biden or interrupt Eric the Red Holder from his industrial evidence shredding, otherwise known as cleaning out his desk. Let the little people attend to that. I got better things to do. You know, it's said that the absence of the leader of the world's most powerful nation did not go unnoticed. But I guess that's Vladimir Putin's and Xi Jinping's problem. Xi Jinping being the president of China, Red China, in case you were wondering. Now, it brings us back to that endless question of Barack Obama's incompetence versus his malevolence. The fact that his regime has announced a World Security Summit for February 18th in Washington suggests that the White House is belatedly realizing what a huge faux pas skipping this Paris anti-terror rally really was. This is from the London Daily Mail. Well, that figures. You have to go overseas, find out what's going on in our own country. Quote, Barack Obama will invite allies to a February... he's got his allies, but they're all our enemies. To a February 18th security summit in Washington to try and prevent violent extremism. U.S. Attorney General and Reichsfuhrer Eric Holder said on Sunday after meeting his European counterparts in Paris. The gathering of justice and interior chiefs came as France mourned 17 victims of Islamist gunmen this past week and the worst assault on its homeland security in decades. We will bring together all of our allies to discuss ways in which we can counteract this violent extremism. Doesn't say extreme what. That exists around the world, Holder told reporters, end of quote. Yeah, but they already gathered in Paris yesterday and you couldn't be bothered to show up. I still tend to think it isn't incompetence, but rather the same cognitively dissonant dichotomy that has always characterized Obama's foreign policy. Barack Obama wants to rule the world. He wants the world to bow down and worship him. But he also wants to reduce America to the rest of the world's level. I think he judged that if he showed up at the Paris rally yesterday, all the world would have looked to him as the leader of the United States of America, and he didn't want his country to receive that or any kind of prestige. In other words, yesterday was a meaningful event precisely because of its symbolism. Maybe. But by cobbling together a dog and pony show security summit, where the word Islam and its derivatives will never even so much as once be mentioned, but at which he will be the master of ceremonies, making them come to him, he can ensure that he will get all the glory, he can lead from behind, and his jihadist allies won't be dissed. Anybody who expected anything else from this douchebag either refuses to pay attention or is an incurable optimist. I, fortunately for all of you, am neither. United against terrorism, 50 world leaders march with millions in France, but not Barack Obama. So begins Andrew Malcolm's column today at Investors Business Daily. Possibly 3 million French citizens and hundreds of thousands of others around the world marched in solidarity in defiance of jihadism Sunday after the week's murders and hostage takings in and around Paris. More than 50 world leaders journeyed to Paris to join French President and card-carrying communist Francios Hollande and the bold street bold. Yeah, I suppose it's bold. I commented yesterday on Facebook, boy, the jihadists will have never had a bigger target than this. All it would take is one sniper in a hidden place, just start and just. Thank God that didn't happen. But likely the largest street march in French history against jihadism and for freedom of speech. They included arm in arm, and we went through the list, of course, earlier, but German Chancellor Angela Merkel, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, British Prime Minister David Cameron, and Palestinian Authority head Mahmoud Abbas. Leaders from Spain, Italy, Sweden, Finland, Norway, Turkey, Ukraine, Russia, Mali, and Jordan also dropped everything to attend, as did French Muslim leaders. Paris is today the capital of the world, Hollande arrogantly declared. Demonstrating the style of absentee international leadership his countrymen have come to expect, Barack Obama remained holed up in the White House on Sunday. Wow, it's amazing. He even deigned to return from Hawaii. Vice President Biden did the same in his private Delaware home. Commissar of State John Kerry, who said climate change is the worst threat facing global humanity, was also indisposed, which is probably a good thing. On Wednesday, before a State of the Union speech preview swing across the country, Barack Obama called the jihadist killings cowardly evil acts. Okay, but now finish it. Connect the dots. Come on, you can do it, Barry. No, he can't do it. Even if he could, he never would. But he went on to strangely add, the most important thing I want to say is that our thoughts and prayers are with prayers to who? are with the families of those who've been lost in France. Obama added, it's so important for us to stand in solidarity with France. Yeah, but against whom? Generally speaking, when you're standing in solidarity with someone, it's standing against somebody else. You won't say it, will you? Of course not. Because those against whom the rest of the world is standing in solidarity, or at least trying to create the appearance of standing in solidarity, are his allies in reality. But he was either too busy or perhaps fearful of security concerns. So instead of asking a former president like Bill Clinton or George W. Bush to represent America in Paris, only our ambassador marched. Soon to be, allegedly soon to be, ex-Reichsfuhrer Eric the Red Holder showed up for a photo op, but didn't march. Wow, a black man not marching. Who'd have thunk it? And he's not exactly a symbol of unity anywhere, and one who himself has ordered investigations of journalists. Chancellor Merkel said, when these values of freedom of speech are threatened, we can say only one thing. We have to stand united. Behold the leader, the real leader of the free world, ladies and gentlemen. She was captured in a touching photo, resting her head sympathetically on... Ugh, that's not touching, it's creepy. She was resting her head sympathetically on Hollande's shoulder. Boy, she's going to need a strong shampoo. Back home in Germany overnight, the offices of the... And that's in the stack as well. The Hamburg Morgenpost were torched by arsonists in apparent retaliation for reprinting of some of the Paris Weekly's cartoons depicting Muhammad. That's referring to Charlie Hebdo. Obama's predictable response to the multiple terror attacks and 17 deaths in France was to call for a February summit in Washington against violent extremism. But extreme what? He won't say, will he? It's not designed as a strategy session or unveiling of new anti-terrorism measures, but merely to highlight existing ones. Celebrate them? Actually, Obama didn't announce the photo op. He had his press secretary, Josh Earnest, the White House spokesjerk, release a written statement Sunday that showed signs of hasty writing. Ernest said, well, I already covered that. I'll go through it real quick. On February 18th, 2015, the White House will host a summit on countering violent extremism. Extreme what? To highlight domestic and international efforts to prevent violent extremists. Extreme what? And their supporters from radicalizing, recruiting, and inspiring individuals or groups in the United States and abroad to commit acts of violence. Efforts made even more imperative in light of recent tragic attacks in Ottawa, Sydney, and Paris. Across France, vast crowds assembled spontaneously, including one in Marseille on a national day of mourning for the 12 killed in the terrorist attack on the satirical weekly Charlie Hebdo. For a Paris policewoman assassinated in the street and 4 Jewish grocery shoppers killed by a jihadist during a hostage standoff. French special forces killed 3 terrorists in the confrontations. Rumor has it that they broke custom and actually armed themselves for the occasion. Even as far away as frigid Mongolia, citizens held outdoor candlelight vigils in support of France and against the Islamic fundamentalists who perpetrated last week's terrorist incidents there. Coming so soon after the year-end holidays of several religions, the bloody incidents have struck a shocking and I'm not sure what's shocking about it, and resounding chord, at least outside the White House, in disparate cultures across much of the world. The social media Twitter reported that use of the now iconic hashtag Je suis Charlie, we are Charlie Hebdo, exploded to the most of any ever used in the service's nearly 9-year history. In the United States, a group of writers opened a Facebook page seeking likes, petitioning for a congressional resolution apologizing to the international community for Obama's weak show of anti-terrorism support and inadequate representation at the Paris March. But again, does it surprise anybody? I'm sure not in this audience. In the words of Clubber Lang, ladies and gentlemen, we got a lot of more. We got a lot of more right after these faux commercial words. Don't go anywhere. Hour number 2 of the Hard Starboard Radio Network on this Monday, January the 12th, 2015. 6 days before the NFC Championship game, and of course the AFC Championship game, but that's kind of an afterthought. I mean, the real Super Bowl is at the Clink this Sunday, and that's, in my opinion, not going to be much of a matchup. Not like last year's was. Last year's NFC title game was epic. Arguably the best NFC Championship game ever played. This Sunday, not so much. But we shall see. The Packers will take their best shot. Green Bay Packers, that is. They'll take their best shot, and we'll see what happens. I wonder if the same guy that made that video about horse attack. Horses everywhere running as fast as they can toward New Jersey. They've broken through every line of defense this country has to offer. And so forth. I wonder what he's going to come up with this year. It'll be a little bit harder to do because how can you make at least, well, at the very least, how can you make a video like that using a similar template against patriots? Maybe if Indy upsets the New England Patriots this Sunday, maybe they could tweak that horse theme again. Hell, they could probably just reuse the whole thing, the same thing. Just change on the graphic, change MetLife Stadium to University of Phoenix Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. Horses are running toward Arizona. Could work. I don't know how they do it with the Patriots, though. I guess that remains to be seen. Now, as well as the American media ever not blaming their own country. I mean, they can't be bothered with leading the world or fighting jihadism. But when it comes to misassigning blame for the latter, the American left never hesitates. Here's the quote from truthrevolt.org. An NBC reporter on yesterday, put blame on U.S. foreign policy for the spate of Islamic terror attacks around the world. On Sunday's Press the Meat, reporter Ayman Moyeldin said that, quote, for some radicalization and attacks against the U.S. stem from anger at American foreign policies and wars in the Middle East. The show's pre-taped segment also quoted Muslim extremist Qasim Ali, who said, quote, whether it's the internet or television, this Islamophobia has been going on for the last several years, and it has hurt. It has really hurt. Close quote. Now, I guess not wanting to be murdered by jihadists is now defined as Islamophobia. Beats me what Ali is talking about, in any case, regarding the last several years. Once again, we have the Oba media putting Barack Obama's face on the side of a milk carton, as though the U.S. presidency has been vacant ever since W rode off into the Crawford-bound sunset. The internet, I imagine, refers to, well, blogs like politicalpistachio.com, podcasts like the Hard Starboard Radio Network, American Daily Review, radio shows like Constitution Radio, Douglas V. Gibbs. But television? Well, Fox News, I suppose. Maybe One America Network. I mean, even that is at least half cliched, as Fox isn't nearly as conservative as the left makes it out to be. They simply give conservatives a voice right alongside liberals. Now, there is another question to be asked. To which American foreign policy is Moyeldin referring? Ayman Moyeldin. Again, Bush 43 left office 6 years ago. Could it be that Barack Obama's airborne pinpricks in Iraq, he hasn't gone into Syria, but in Iraq, could that be what Ayman Moyeldin is referring to? Perhaps, possibly, maybe? Which came as a contrived response, of course, to the Islamic State's openly and proudly and boastfully decapitating one American hostage after another before the entire world, not to mention the overrunning most of Iraq and Syria, threatening Jordan and Saudi Arabia, and religiously cleansing all the territory they capture. So Barack Obama wasn't even supposed to pretend to resist jihadism? Any act of Western self-defense, no matter how impotent, even global unity rallies, Is Islamophobia and thus a provocation to the Muslim world? Even though a number of Muslim leaders participated in the Paris March, for which they've taken a lot of heat, by the way, back home, so to speak. Yep, ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly right. Even the existence of any country and people outside the control of Islam is defined as Islamophobia. The only solution to that Islamophobia is submission to or conquest by the global caliphate. And NBCCCP and its jihadist correspondents will be there to chronicle it all, ladies and gentlemen. Doesn't that make you feel a whole lot better? Maybe they should change their peacock logo to give it a hump. Have you ever heard of the German publication Hamburger Morgenpost? Actually, that's German for the Hamburg Morning Post. Hamburger Morgenpost is the Hamburg, Germany Morning Post. And something unpleasant happened to their headquarters over the weekend. Now, it should be noted that this German newspaper republished Charlie Hebdo cartoons lampooning the lampooning Muhammad. So right on cue. I mean, it hasn't even been 5 days since the Charlie Hebdo massacre, and here you go. I guess the violent extremists, whose name nobody dares utter, aren't any more impressed with yesterday's show of global unity in the capital of the world, than Barack Hussein Obama was. Here is the quote from, right off the AP wire. With security services on high alert after a jihadist killing spree in Paris, police on the northern German port city of Hamburg said no one was at the headquarters of the regional daily Hamburger Morgenpost at the time of the attack, which caused only slight damage. By the way, the attack refers to the firebombing of the offices of the Hamburg Morning Post. Hamburg police said it was too soon to tell whether there was a connection between the Charlie Hebdo tribute and the firebombing, which would be the first attack against the cartoon since Wednesday's massacre of 12 people at the French Weekly. Wow, it's been a long 5 days, hasn't it? Rocks and then a burning object were thrown through the window, police spokesman told the Associated Press. 2 rooms on lower floors were damaged Two rooms on lower floors were damaged, but the fire was put out quickly. The Hamburg Morning Post, known locally as the Mopo, had splashed the Charlie Hebdo cartoons on its front page after the massacre at the Paris publication with the headline, "This much freedom must be possible." End of quote. Now, first of all, praise the Lord that nobody was injured, much less killed in the hamburger attack. And I can even kind of sort of understand why German police say it's too soon to tell if there's a Charlie Hebdo connection in their official capacity, because they're still gathering evidence. But unofficially, though, can there really be any doubt? And doesn't this underscore that jihadist attacks are going to continue in escalating machine gun fashion, no pun intended? No matter how many global unity marches are held that Barack Obama snubs. Indeed, this might actually have been a case of the one actually being the most honest world leader, and then he doesn't give a rat's ass about jihadism and no longer has any reason to pretend otherwise. Bottom line is, Islamic fundamentalists have seen all they believe they need to see to convince them that they are the strong horse, we are the weak horse, and thus they are invincible, their global caliphate inevitable, their conquest of the West assured. And global unity marches notwithstanding, there's still no indication from the United States or the rest of the West that conclusion isn't spot-on accurate. And you know what, folks? The price of reversing that conclusion in Muslim minds is guaranteed to be steeper than any American is willing to pay. If the last 6 years are any indication. I just knew that this Kumbaya fest yesterday couldn't possibly be completely on the level. And then I got confirmation late this morning. In fact, the source is newsmax.com. The socialist government of French Communist President Francios Hollande did not want Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to take part in Sunday's mass rally in Paris against terrorism, according to Israeli media reports. Israel Channel 2, which generally takes an anti-Netanyahu line, reported that the French had signaled his presence would be divisive. Because, unlike the other so-called world leaders that were present, Benjamin Netanyahu actually does resist and fight jihadism. It's about the only Western leader who does, frankly. He's the only Western leader who's actually a leader, who's actually serious about fighting jihadism, fighting Islamic fundamentalism, and believing that his country and Western culture are worth, and his people are worth defending. I mean, only after Netanyahu said he would go anyway, crash the party, as it were, did President Hollande call to invite him, the Israeli media reported. In other words, he's going to be here anyway. I guess I better make it look like he's coming at my behest, or else it would have been even more embarrassing. It would have been embarrassing instead of just awkward, in other words. And the picture I'm looking at here, oh boy. It's a picture of Hollande and Bibi Netanyahu. And Netanyahu, he looks confident, manly as always. And there's this little pipsqueak of a Frenchie. He looks like a character from Big Bang Theory, to be honest with you. He looks like Leonard from Big Bang Theory. He's this little dinky guy, and he's got this look on his face like he's almost gritting his teeth. I mean, he desperately, if you've ever seen somebody who desperately doesn't want to be where he is, look at this picture at politicalpistachio.com. It's on the front page. It is his expression, President Hollande's expression, is all you need to see. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about as soon as you see it. And it's cowardly anti-Semitism. Because at least the Islamic fundamentalists have the courage of their Jew-hating convictions. I mean, it's totally passive-aggressive when it comes to the French political class. Relations between the Israeli and French governments have been tense. France has played a vanguard role in backing the Palestinians at the UN Security Council. You know, the state that's was born in terror, born from terror. Hollande has been further irked by Netanyahu's recent calls for French Jews to emigrate to Israel. Well, all I can say about that is if Francios Hollande won't actually do anything to protect French Jews from Muslim attacks, well, Bibi Netanyahu sure as hell will. French Prime Minister Manuel Valls told Jeffrey Goldberg, another Netanyahu critic at the Atlantic magazine, that if 100,000 Jews leave... Oh, sorry, let me try to get into accent here. If 100,000 Jews leave, France will no longer be France. The French Republic will be judged a failure. Now let me get this straight. Okay, let's see if I understand this. France will no longer be France without that specific 1/660th of its population. 100,000 people out of 66 million, and if they emigrate, France will no longer be France. I mean, for a tiny fraction of its population that they apparently passively detest, they sure seem eager to keep those 100,000 French Jews right where they are, where they can be more easily slaughtered, I imagine. At least until the Iranians decide to start firing off their nukes. No, it makes you wonder if this is a moderately subtle, the Jews will take all our money with them joke. Well, if they do emigrate, hopefully they'll leave the stench behind. Speaking of a lack of subtlety, resuming quote, Jewish Agency Chairman Natan Sharansky attended a ceremony at the Grand Synagogue of Paris on Sunday night, along with Netanyahu and Hollande. The French president left the synagogue before Netanyahu began to speak, Israeli radio reported. Sharansky's agency would be charged with coordinating the absorption of Jewish immigrants in France. Oh, man. Talk about us, snubs all around, apparently. And by contrast, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas was warmly and personally welcomed by Francios Hollande. Some Israeli media reports claim that French authorities purposefully placed Netanyahu in the second row of marching leaders and Abbas in the first tier alongside Hollande and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Well, passive-aggressive prejudice is almost high school-esque, isn't it? I mean, it's like Revenge of the Nerds, only without the beer, belching, and boobies, and with a core dump of bigotry. It was all for show, in other words. The Charlie Hebdo massacre was too public for the French government to ignore, so they hastily cobbled together yesterday's march as an empty publicity stunt that will have absolutely no change in foreign policy reality to it. After another week or two of mourning, it'll be back to jihadist coddling business as usual. Second look at Barack Obama playing golf instead. I like the headline of Quinn Hillier's piece today at National Review Online, although I think it's a bit too declarative. I mean, it should be declarative. It reads, "Wake up, it's war. Dear jihadists, we're all Jews now." See what I mean about it being too declarative? It should be that way. It is a war. We should all be Jews now, just as supposedly we're all Charlie Hebdo. Excuse me. I keep getting the D and the B mixed up. Makes me sound dyslexic. But is that the reality? I think not, really. Now, the Islamic State has chemical weapons and apparently radiological weapons, which, so they claim, they've already deployed in a European city. Haven't said which one. I'm guessing it wasn't Paris, because there would never have been a better time to dust Paris than yesterday. But and you know what? The Islamic State's leaders are furious and determined in their fury to use those murderous weapons to huge effect. The reason they're furious is not that Israel continues to allegedly mistreat Palestinians, which they don't. They're not. They never have. They never will. In fact, if you're an Arab, if you're a Muslim, and you want to have the best, freest, most liberty-infused life and existence that you can possibly have, you live in Israel. Period, exclamation point. Instead, the Islamic State is angry because Israel and the Palestinians, well, this is news to me, are finally about to announce a lasting peace. Are they, Quinn? I haven't heard anything about this. And it is my job to watch these things. And eventually, I'll get paid for it. The Islamic State doesn't want Arabs to make peace with Israel. It wants Israel and all Jews to cease to exist. Finish the final solution, as it were. And it wants to kill anybody and everybody who enables peace, and anybody and everybody who stands in the way of a widespread, eventual global caliphate. And guess what, folks? It's not that the conflagration is about to begin. It already has. In fact, it began 35 years ago. It's just been going on at various low levels ever since, with occasional high points, depending on your point of view, like September the 11th, 2001. But like I said in hour number 1, we're headed for some really high points, or low points. Again, depending on how you look at this, which side you're on. No, this isn't some investigative news report. It's the scenario in the latest book by best-selling novelist Joel Rosenberg, an American evangelical Christian of Jewish heritage who is a former campaign consultant for Steve Forbes and Benjamin Netanyahu. Rosenberg was part of a delegation in Israel headed by former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum that Quinn Hillier joined last summer during a series of Palestinian rocket attacks. During the trip, Rosenberg impressed Hillier with his broad and deep knowledge of Middle East affairs. To an uncanny degree, his novels seem to be ripped from current headlines, even though he writes them well in advance of the events that warrant them. I'm not going to call him a prophet, because the definition of a prophet in Old Testament times was very specific. You needed to be absolutely 100% accurate in all your prognostications. But until another prophet comes along, another biblical prophet, it'll do. Rosenberg wrote his latest, The Third Target, significantly before the Islamic State became a household name in mid-2014. It's hitting the bookstores right now as jihadists lead the news once again in the aftermath of the terrorist attacks last week in France. Attacks that took place despite France's long record of kowtowing to Islamic fundamentalists and its increasingly evident anti-Semitism, and in diplomacy an ever more obvious anti-Zionism. Witness Francios Hollande's blatant snubbing of Prime Minister Netanyahu. It may or may not be significant that one of Friday's jihadists claimed to be a member of the Islamic State, but it should have been no surprise to anyone that his target was a Jewish supermarket. Or that, sure as night follows day, the response of the French government was to order shops closed in the Marais, the Jewish district and famous tourist destination in the very heart of Paris. It's far easier, it seems, to shut the Jews down than it is to protect them. Well, easier and preferable. That passive anti-Semitism at work again. Now, what happened in France is a reminder of that appeasement of Islamic fundamentalism is no protection against jihadism. Because, as the all-too accurate premise of Rosenberg's novel posits, peace is not the jihadist's aim. As Islamic State published last year in a tract called "This is the Promise of Allah," quote, "By Allah, if you disbelieve in democracy, secularism, nationalism, as well as all the other garbage and ideas from the West, and rush to your religion and creed, then by Allah you will own the earth, and the East and West will submit to you. This is the promise of Allah to you. So do not weaken and call for peace while you are superior." End of quote. On Friday, Rosenberg told Quinn Hillier the following. One of the things that concern me most in the big picture is the growing sense of complacency among Western leaders in the last few years about the threat of Islamic fundamentalism. It was a year ago to the day of the Charlie Hebdo attack that Barack Obama gave the interview to the New Yorker saying that ISIS is not a serious threat, that they are a JV squad. Junior varsity, for those of you in Malaga, Washington. The French are also being blindsided. They are stunned. They feel they are doing everything they can to accommodate, to welcome Muslims from all over the world. They've supported a Palestinian state. Their policies have done everything they can to be friendly to Muslims. As you can see, they are just stunned. They're saying, "Violence? Here, what do we do?" When you misunderstand the nature of the enemy you are up against, you are going to get hit in a way you do not expect. In other words, you're going to be hit. And hard. In fact, two guys in black masks and commando gear mowing down an office of cartoonists with AK-47s that's compared in the big picture, that's light. That's not even a nose bloodying. That's like a hangnail compared to what they're building up to. Now, one might ask why we should pay attention to some fulminations from a novelist. In Rosenberg's case, though, we know that in the course of doing research, he has consulted with several former directors of the CIA and directors of Israel's Mossad. We can also note his unnerving record of seeing life imitate his scary fiction. 9 months before 9/11, Rosenberg wrote the opening of his first novel, The Last Jihad, in which Islamic fundamentalists hijack a jet and use it as a guided missile for an attack within U.S. borders. His second novel, The Last Days, featured an attack on a U.S. diplomatic convoy in Gaza. Its review copies were already out when terrorists in Gaza attacked, yes, an American diplomatic convoy. And now with a third target written before the Islamic State took broad swaths of Iraq and Syria, Rosenberg described the Islamic State's conquest of broad swaths of Iraq and Syria. I mean, he seems to be reading the jihadist playbook almost as avidly as the Seahawks defense reads opposing offenses. Now, I'm not trying to predict things that happen, but write about things that really could happen, he says. That's why I write novels, to educate and to warn. I'm reaching more people than I could if I were only writing nonfiction. In other words, he's not a blogger. Rosenberg's message is the same one that former State Department Middle East Specialist Liz Cheney delivered on Greta Van Susteren's Fox News broadcast just last Thursday. Quote, "The problem we have got fundamentally is a president who has told the country repeatedly, the tide of war is receding, Al-Qaeda is on the ropes, I'm ending the wars. And everybody except Barack Obama and those on his national security team recognize you cannot end a war unilaterally. Without winning it, anyway. It's not possible. You've got to win the war. You have got to defeat your enemy. You have got to break your enemy's will. You have got to convince your enemy that his continued resistance, his continued fighting is futile. He can't win. If nothing else, he's got to get a breathing space, buy some time, rearm, re-equip, let the infidels' complacency rebuild, let them lose focus, get fat, dumb, and happy again, and then, when the time is right, resume the war. Even that's not possible if you don't fight the war, if you don't win it. So a president who has said all these things repeatedly for the last 6 years, unwilling to acknowledge that it's a war, and he is at the same time releasing guys from Gitmo that we know will return to the battlefield. It's a war to deny the jihadists their caliphate, their Sharia empire. In its Promise of Allah tract, the Islamic State promises its adherents that once the caliphate is established, they will be able to boast, and I quote, "We took it forcibly at the point of a blade. We brought it back conquered and complete and compelled. We established it in defiance of many, and the people's necks were violently struck with bombings, explosions, destruction, while the hearts of the infidels have been filled with terror." End of quote. Chief among the targeted infidels, of course, are Jews in the State of Israel. As Simone Rodan Benazquin, head of the American Jewish Committee, the American Jewish Committee in Paris, told the Jerusalem Post in the wake of the kosher supermarket attack, quote, "Hatred of Jews never ends with Jews. Islamic fundamentalists have struck violently from the murders at a Jewish school in Toulouse 2 years ago, to repeated incidents of violence against Jews in synagogues in Paris, to the vicious rape of a Jewish woman in her own home, and today's assault on a kosher supermarket in the middle of Paris," close quote. Yet, none of those attacks spurred the wall-to-wall coverage of the assault on a satirical magazine. Maybe, finally, but really doubtfully, Europe and the wrong-headed Obama regime will start to understand what Jews in Israel have been dealing with for so long, but don't count on it, folks. On Thursday, the head of Britain's MI5 said that intelligence reports suggest we will see a series of massive attacks on the West. "My sharpest concern as Director General of MI5, he said, is the growing gap between the increasingly challenging threat and the decreasing availability of capabilities to address it." Now try to sleep well tonight. Better stock up on melatonin, that's all I can tell you. It's not an original thought to say that we are all Jews now. Our culture and civilization are under assault. We must fight to win. But the problem is, we have not elected the leader that will do it. I'm sorry, my friends. It seems to have become my lot in life, my calling, to be the Jeremiah of the 21st century. To bring news and realities to my countrymen that they probably don't want to hear. I certainly don't want to. I don't enjoy telling you these things. I certainly wouldn't want to hear them, but it's reality. And the reality is that in 2008 and 2012, the American people voted to, among other things, to surrender to the global Islamic Caliphate. Simple as that. By electing Barack Hussein Obama President of the United States. Because Barack Hussein Obama is in passionate love with the Muslim Brotherhood. He is pro-jihadist. He does not resist Islamic jihadism. He refuses to even name the enemy. He is pro-jihadist. I'm not saying Barack Obama's a Muslim. I've been through this before about that question. Somebody on the right say, well, Barack Obama's a closet Muslim. Barack Obama is not a Muslim because he would have to take a demotion from the pantheon of the gods to just being a mere mortal. Just being a mere dictator, as opposed to being a god himself. He's not going to take a demotion under Allah. But he hates the West. He hates Jews. He hates Christians. And what do you know? So do Islamic fundamentalists. So again, it's that same alliance of convenience that I keep talking about. And that's what the American people voted for. The one interesting thing about these massive attacks that are coming, and who knows what form they'll take, whether it's another 9/11, whether it's gas attacks and several different metropolitan subways at once, whether it's a dirty bomb, who knows? It almost doesn't matter. But as the mushroom cloud or clouds is going up, as the body count starts stacking up, etc., etc., it will be fascinating to watch, the public reaction. Because remember the public reaction after 9/11, even on the headline of no less than the San Francisco Chronicle. If there is a more left-wing city than San Francisco, California, I don't know what it is. And the headline of September 12th, 2001 was, in huge, towering capital letters, "Bastards!" over a picture of the World Trade Center collapsing. Both World Trade Center towers. So, I mean, the reaction will be, well, like that after another mass casualty Islamic fundamentalist attack. But then Barack Obama's reaction will be fascinating, because I don't think there will be one. He'll go out, he'll give a speech, and he'll go play golf like he always does. And then people will see exactly what they elected. And elections, as the saying goes, have consequences. Now, get a load of this. We'll close with this today, folks. ISIS hacks U.S. Central Command. Now, the good news is it was U.S. CENTCOM's social media accounts. Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Facebook. So we're hopefully not talking about any military secrets. But the bad news? The cyber caliphate, as the hackers call themselves, took a haul of personal information about the families of U.S. military personnel just to make those of the latter that haven't been ousted, discharged, or forcibly anally buggered that much more warm and fuzzy. Here's the quote from theweeklystandard.com. First of two quotes. In the name of Allah, most gracious, the most merciful, the cyber caliphate under the auspices of ISIS continues its cyber jihad. While the U.S. and its satellites kill our brothers in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, we broke into your networks and personal devices and know everything about you. You'll see no mercy, infidels. ISIS is already here. We are in your PCs, in each military base. With Allah's permission, we are in CENTCOM now. We won't stop. We know everything about you, your wives, your children. U.S. soldiers, we're watching you. There is no God but Allah. Muhammad is his prophet. There is no law but Sharia. Close quote. Stereotypical jihadist bluster? Well, sounds like it, doesn't it? Is it justified? Hell yeah. They proved they could do it by doing it. All other things being equal, if you were a soldier or a sailor or an airman or a marine of any rank, and you knew that the enemy knew where your family lives, all their names, their living patterns, where your kids go to school, etc., how eager would you be to fight ISIS? Especially given that you know your commander-in-chief embraces the jihad and won't do anything to protect your loved ones. All it would take is one U.S. service person's family perishing in flames, or a hail of bullets, or their terrified and filmed beheadings, to send that message and spread that fear throughout the U.S. Armed Forces and throughout the U.S. in general. Now, along with that fear would come, of course, as I just mentioned mere moments ago, a lot of anger. I mean, would that arouse the American people to regain an appetite for and demand retribution? Sure it would. Absolutely. Would Barack Obama heed it? Hell no. That would be more proof to him of how backward and Islamophobic America still is, and how much more fundamental transformation remains to be forcibly implemented, and how many more additional terms he'll need to decree himself to accomplish it. Now, here was White House spokesjerk Josh Earnest irritably downplaying the second foreign cyber attack in a month. Quote, the official Twitter and YouTube accounts for the U.S. Central Command were hacked by a group that pledges allegiance to the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. CENTCOM has currently suspended its Twitter account following the attack. The hackers released contact information of dozens of military personnel. They also released information related to China and Korean scenarios. A Pentagon official told Reuters that CENTCOM is taking appropriate measures to address the matter. They've closed their Twitter account, for example. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest said Monday that they are looking into the hack. I can tell you this is something that we're obviously looking into, something we take very seriously. However, just a note of caution to folks as they're covering this story, there is a pretty significant difference between what is a large data breach and the hacking of a Twitter account. So we're all still examining and investigating the extent of this incident, but I don't have any information beyond that for you, Earnest told reporters, end of quote. Well, the only thing that persuades me that ISIS hasn't totally penetrated U.S. CENTCOM's computer network is their inclination to conspicuously celebrate every blow against the infidels that they strike. But the 9/11 plot amply demonstrated that jihadists are more than capable of discretion in the carrying out of a major operation. So perhaps this hacking of military Twitter and Facebook accounts is a feint as distraction from a more serious cyber breach. And if they can penetrate our military networks, how difficult would it be for them, or the NOCOs, or the Russians, or the Chicons, to remotely sabotage our civilian infrastructure? Hydroelectric dams, nuclear power plants, sewage treatment facilities, hospitals, the electrical grid. I mean, one thing is certain, folks. The enemies have absolutely no hesitation or fear of doing so. That product of robust deterrence, the doubt that an enemy can attack the U.S. without suffering significant retaliation, has been irretrievably lost and can only be regained at great destabilizing cost. One in which Barack Obama will never be willing to invest. We're reaping the whirlwind of 2008 and 2012, folks. And if I can let you in on a clue, we haven't seen anything yet. 22 hours and 2 minutes from now, there will be more of the Hard Starboard Radio Network. blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Join us.